Continuing on with reading history. The role to be assigned to a potential husband was another question that aroused justifiable anxiety. A royal consort could easily seize power. Worse still, a foreign prince, if he outlived his wife, might create dangerous dynastic complications. For the public good, it seemed essential that the king remarry. It is not beyond the bounds of possibility that Queen Catherine might have accepted this, had not the presence of a rival robbed the debate of all calm and objectivity, and had the lawyers devised a solution that would have safeguarded her daughter Mary's rights and status. A ferocious struggle ensued, for gentle, devout Catherine contested every inch of ground and proved dauntless and unyielding in the face of a powerful foe. Henry VIII had had a number of mistresses during his marriage. One of them had even given him a son, whom he acknowledged and created Duke of Richmond, but he had never been passionately in love with any of them. No woman ever resisted his advances, so his conquests soon bored him. Anne Boleyn, a young woman at court, was self-assured enough to play a different game. Once the king had succumbed to her charms, she kept him at arm's length. She had no intention of following in the footsteps of her elder sister, who had yielded to the king, but unable to retain his affection, had been compelled to contract a mediocre marriage a few months later. Anne's teasing tactics paid off, and Henry fell madly in love with her. His dynastic concerns were reinforced by the promptings of desire, and in 1527 he set about divorcing his wife. The conflict between them lasted for 6 years and culminated in a political and religious revolution affecting the entire kingdom. Henry's pretext for requesting an annulment was that he had married his brother's widow, a union prescribed by the Church. True, Pope Julius II had agreed to grant a dispensation, but it could be asserted that he was not entitled to set aside a prohibition contained in Holy Writ. Thus, Henry possessed an argument that carried some weight. Catherine countered by claiming that her first marriage had never been consummated. Henry knew perfectly well that he had married a virgin, and, consequently, that neither she nor her husband had lived in sin. However, he was so convinced that Pope Clement VII would quickly grant him satisfaction that this counterattack did not seriously worry him. Plenty of sovereigns, notably his brother-in-law Louis XII, had succeeded in getting their marriages dissolved. But Henry was wrong to underestimate the influence wielded over the Pope by Charles V, Catherine's nephew, and he failed to foresee the innumerable techniques of evasion that enabled the pontiff to play for time. The English king continued to exert pressure on Clement VII for 4 long years, but not even the threat of schism was enough to make the Holy Father give way. Only Catherine's death could liberate Henry VIII, and, in view of the brutality he displayed when dealing with his subsequent wives, we are entitled to feel surprised that he did not have her poisoned. It was one of his advisors, Thomas Cromwell, who finally showed him that he was barking up the wrong tree, and that the solution to his problems lay in England, not Rome. Going beyond the king's special case, Cromwell harped on the growing unpopularity of the Church, its taxes, abuses, and influence. By doing so, he helped to found the English constitutional monarch and organize the sovereign state. He did not seek the support of the House of Lords, half of whose members were ecclesiastics incapable of attacking a religious institution so profitable to them. Instead, he turned to the House of Commons, which was populated by merchants, lawyers, and gentlemen who needed no encouragement to expose and deplore the misdeeds of bishops and priests. In 1532, the legislative independence of the Catholic Church in England was abolished. Appeals to the pontifical court relating to marriage or succession were prohibited. Having thus been released from papal jurisdiction, Henry VIII could at last divorce his wife. Another decision vital to the future of the kingdom freed the Church of England from the financial tutelage of Rome. Until the Reformation, every bishop who took possession of a diocese had to pay the Pope a tax. From now on, that sum was payable to the crown. This revolution, for it genuinely was one, was cemented by state expropriation of the Church's vast estates, which comprised a quarter of the kingdom. Monasteries were dissolved and their lands sold off. The result on the national plane was the submission of the Church to civil authority. The king had arrogated all its temporal powers, that is to say, its rights of administration and taxation, of appointing its own dignitaries and controlling its own courts of justice. In 1535, Henry VIII assumed the title of Supreme Head of the Church of England. Archbishop Cranmer, who was to direct the transformation of the Anglican Church, declared the marriage between Catherine and Henry null and void early in 1533, and on the 25th of January of that year the king married Anne Boleyn, an urgent and necessary denouement because the young woman had yielded to him at last and was pregnant. She was crowned Queen of England on the 1st of June and gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth, in September. Regarded henceforth as her father's only legitimate daughter, Elizabeth assumed the title Princess Royal, which had previously been held by her older half-sister Mary, and took precedence over her. The trouble was, the hoped-for male heir still failed to appear. Henry VIII felt unable to dissolve his second marriage without opening the door to revalidation of the first, but Catherine, debilitated by her virtual imprisonment, died on the 7th of January, 1536. On the 29th, the very day of her predecessor's funeral, Anne gave birth to a stillborn child, a boy. Her bad luck persisted. Henry was not prepared to wait another 17 years to rid himself of an exasperating wife. He accused Anne of adultery and instituted proceedings against her, being at pains to observe the formalities, but took no notice of his wife's denials. He had the marriage annulled and ordered Anne Boleyn's execution on the 19th of May, 1536. He was considerate enough to spare her the axe, which was thought to be less efficient and more ignominious than the sword, and sent for a particular skillful executioner from Calais to behead her. He married Jane Seymour 11 days later.